Just let me know when to share the screen.
Sure. Folks, see you now. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So I hope everyone enjoyed the surprise snow in the morning and no one got any mishaps with cars or walking. It's a slow moving object there. I wear these headphones because we have a little puppy that wanders around, so he might disturb us if I'm not wearing this.
Dr. Wong, I'm just sharing right now in the chat a link to our website with upcoming talks and all the previously recorded talks that we have. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now.
That's great. Yeah. So we're just waiting for a few more people to come into the room, and we'll probably start in a couple of minutes, Leona.
Yeah, sounds good.
You tell me when the room's full.
We've got 25 eager folks online, and welcome. Here's my cat. We'll give it one more minute.
Okay. So for those of you who are early birds, thanks for coming and taking the time to spend time with Leona and myself and our whole group. This is our 6th year, I believe, our Empowering Patients program. So couldn't do it without Leona. She's been here with me from the beginning to help us organize and keep in touch with all of you that are regulars to our Empowering Patients program through the Burnaby Division of Family Practice. So this is the first year we've been doing them all virtual because of the pandemic. And it was a year ago we did our last one in person at the Redwood Community Center.
That's right.
Yeah, and then we started off by teaching people how to wash their hands because it was all new at that time. People didn't know how to wash their hands before the pandemic.
I can't believe it's been a year.
You know, we've learned so much. So we'll talk about what we've learned during the pandemic and most importantly, what we've learned that matters most in our lives. I think we've learned a lot of good things in the pandemic through a really challenging time for everyone.
I think if you want to get started, we're at 7:03.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. So
Sure.
just take me a second. Okay. Does that look okay to you, Leona?
Looks great.
Okay. So I'm not crowding out these slides, am I? Okay, good.
They're really clear. They're really clear.
Okay.
I like you.
Good. So the topic today is the positive potential of our relationship. So how to maintain healthy relationships. We kind of miss this hand holding, especially with my kids and their significant others, because they haven't been able to hold hands for a year. They've been really good in following the rules. And thank you all for being really careful during this pandemic and looking after yourselves and your family and your loved ones, washing your hands and keeping to your bubbles. It's made a big difference. And hopefully we'll all get our immunizations over the next 6 months or so. And this thing will settle down. We can get back to a new, even better normal. And we'll talk about some of the things that we've learned during the pandemic as well. So this is a time to kind of reflection. And this is not a course for people having troubles with relationships, but it's a refresher and tips that I've learned from my own family and my own patients over the years of how to manage the challenges in all our relationships at home, school, work, and in every aspect of our lives. So I wonder why my slides are not moving. There we go. And of course, this is brought to you by the Burnaby Division of Family Practice. So that's a nonprofit association of the family doctors, the doctors that serve the patients throughout all of Burnaby. And our website is division's bc.ca. So that's a key place where you can look up these previous resources. And I'll talk about some resources that are available in the community, because the pandemic's been a really tough time for all of us, but especially for those struggling with chronic health conditions, people suffering from emotional difficulties. Many of us have been really struggling because we're not connected to our usual supports, not only our family doctors, but also our social networks, and being able to do all the things that we've been doing as a routine to stay healthy. So we have a lot of resources there, and I'll point you to that during these slides. And Leona is also going to give you a link to a handout that I prepare for each of our talks, kind of the key points from the slides, so you don't have to take notes. But soon, I think within the next week, you usually are able to get these slides online. So if you go to this link, you'll be able to find out where you can see these slides in case you want to look it over or share it with your loved ones. So why are we here? I always start that with every talk. And of course, I'm here because of my mom and my dad. But there's a bigger story behind that, because my mom had a huge influence on me because she taught me to see the potential in myself and other people. And she taught me how to be a loving, caring person. It's great to have someone that loves you unconditionally. So my mom really cared for everyone in the family, especially my dad. He was able to go to work every day, not having to worry about anything outside of work. And he was always available for us as well. But he'd be able to have his breakfast cooked every morning, come back for lunch, and then have a nice warm lunch cooked by my mom, and take a nap, and then go back to the office again. And it was a good life. She looked after everyone in the family. And when I was growing up, I was quite sick. I had rheumatoid arthritis as a kid. So I had many, many visits to doctors, and I was in the hospital even in grade 6. And my mom would take me to all those appointments, worry for me, and look after me and visit me every day when I was in the hospital as well. And it was when I was at Burnaby Hospital in the pediatric ward, I really appreciated the care by the nurses and the doctors and how they treated me as a whole kid and not just the kid that's sick or treating my disease. So I wanted to do something like that with my life, helping people when they're distressed or needing help, but treating them like whole people and not just treating conditions or diseases. And my mom had many friends, and it kind of branched into the congregation and other people in our neighborhood at Clifton Avenue United. She was a sunshine lady, so she would be the one that would make sure there's a birthday card for everyone in the congregation and visit anyone that was sick in the hospital. So she was our sunshine lady, and of course she was the big sunshine in our family as well. And she really cared for our community. She was really active in our community centers and always volunteering and doing kind things for other people. So it was a big tragedy when she died suddenly. It's a long time ago, 2003, when my daughter was just 4 years old and my boys were still in elementary school. But she did teach me the most important thing is her legacy is a legacy of love. So the love she gave to me is the love I give forward to my own family and to my patients and my friends, my colleagues, and the people in my community. And so that legacy from my mom keeps going on and on. It's kind of like the water cycle. So we all know that you have water in your body. In fact, 60% of your body is made up of water in various forms, including your blood, including anything that might be in your bladder, which that's why these talks are only an hour and a half long, so you can take a break. And even though this is a Zoom call, you are allowed to take a break because we don't have you unmuted, so you don't have to worry about that. But water takes many forms, and we don't keep the water in us all together. We drink water, we consume it, we get it from our food and drinking. We will get rid of it in the next couple of hours, and it goes back into the water cycle, ends up in precipitation in the snow that we had this morning or the rain that we usually have. So water is a part of us. We don't own it, but we pass through a cycle. And I think in the same way, like my mom's example is, we're part of this love cycle. So that's it's an important part of our identity, kind of the purpose of love, learning to accept love in many forms from imperfect and perfect people, and being loved just the way we are, and be able to pass that love in many ways and many ways of caring to other people. So just as my mom was kind of expanding her circle of care over a lifetime, we're part of that same love cycle. And just like the family doctors in the divisions of family practice in Burnaby and elsewhere, we care for our patients, but we also care for our community. That's why we're so active in getting out there, helping people even before the pandemic, especially those that are unfortunate, and even the people outside of our own practices. So that's the big benefit of doctors working together with our community partners and the Health Authority and the Ministry of Health, and the many wonderful organizations that provide care in financial, social, and emotional support. And all of us, all of you here, are caring for your community, the people you're in touch with, and we together will improve the health of our community in the future. So we care about our patients, of course, and we care about our community. So today we're going to talk about healthy relationships. I usually start off with just reminding us of the 4 foundations of self-care, how we look after ourselves, and how healthcare providers are just your support and coach to help you and guide you in your self-care, looking after yourselves. We'll talk about why relationships matter, why it's important to our health and emotional well-being. And we'll talk about sources of conflict that all relationships have, because we're not all the same and we don't always agree. And we each kind of grow and change over time. And so how can we grow together? How can we resolve conflict in a peaceful, nonviolent way? I'll talk a bit about the qualities of healthy relationships and some keys to nurturing all of your relationships. So be they the relationships at home or at work, with your neighbors, or in the greater community, or at school. So what is healthcare? So people usually think healthcare are the things that doctors and nurses and other allied healthcare professionals do. We often think about the acute care, like surgery in the hospital, emergency treatments. But if you ask any family doctor or nurse practitioner, they'll tell you that most of the care is in the community, that chronic care and preventive care. But really, who provides most of your health care? It's not your family doctor or your nurse practitioner or other primary care provider. It's really you. You provide pretty well most of your 90% of your health care. You decide what you're going to eat. You decide what you want to do for physical activity. You have some control over your relationships and make your choices. And you are in charge of healthy eating, what you put into your body, or if you take medications as prescribed, or vitamins and other things, you're in charge. We're really there for your support. So real healthcare is that self-care. And our goal is to support you in doing that. So that's a big part of our Empowering Patients program, so that we can give you some good evidence-based, non-biased advice, because a lot of the advice we do get on the internet or on television or radio is usually for someone trying to sell you something. Even favorite doctors like Dr. Oz might be trying to sell you something, but we're just trying to support you in your health, as we're a nonprofit organization, and our greatest joy is helping you achieve your potential. And the best predictor of our future health, of those things that we can control, are the habits we practice today. So we'll take you through the 4 foundations of self-care briefly. So the first is what you eat, what you do, how you feel, and how you relate. So what you eat is healthy eating, what you put into your body, or other things we put in our bodies, like drugs or alcohol or nicotine. And the second foundation is physical activity and appropriate rest. The third is emotional well-being, how you feel, managing stress, finding meaning in your life, recognizing our emotions, and being able to manage them in a healthy, functional way. And today we'll be talking about how we relate, healthy relationships. I think there's 4 important components of healthy relationships. There has to be a good, strong commitment to making relationships work. Important to communicate and learning to listen and to talk mindfully. The connection is important so that you feel connected to your family and your community and friends, and compassion for yourself and the people around you. So healthy relationships. So the new version of this is, of course, you're going to use the hand sanitizer, wash your hands after you touch anyone's hands. I think we've kind of longed to embrace and hold hands and shake hands. It'll be interesting once the pandemic is under control, if we will ever be shaking hands again. So why do relationships matter? They really provide a lot of the social support that we all need. You get that from your friends, your family, your partners, and they're really important. It's a key to emotional well-being and tied to that physical well-being. And when we think about it, I wrote a recent article for the Burnaby Now on reflecting on what we've learned during the pandemic. So take a moment and think about all the things you've learned, the positive things you've learned during a pandemic. Like now we're all kind of experts on face masks and which ones work better. We're even learning about double masking just to be extra careful. We've learned how to put on and take off a mask, how to cover up our noses. We've learned how to wash your hands with hand sanitizers and with soap and water. Some of us have learned to shop online. I think my family has really mastered that because there's always some Amazon boxes at the door pretty well every day. And a lot of us have even learned to order our dinner or lunch as a special treat online. A lot of us has learned how to communicate by video when we can't see one another in person. This has helped a lot because I really miss my dad. I haven't seen him in person for a long time, but we were able to open Christmas presents with Zoom because my dad's pretty sharp. He's been using Zoom to connect with his friends through Burnaby Neighborhood House, and they've had lessons in using computers, and they've been having their meetings and get-togethers online. So I'm pretty impressed. So I'm impressed with all of you that you're able to join us today by Zoom too. And in our office, where most of our 90% of what we're doing with our patients are consulting, dealing with the same problems we dealt with before the pandemic, but 90% of our visits are initially virtual, either by telephone and to a lesser extent video. And then we only bring patients, a few patients in the office each day where we have to do a physical exam, where we need that extra information or things that can only be done in person. Oh, and that's just a reminder that if you do need something from your doctor, please contact their office. That should be your first step rather than going to a healthcare provider virtually that doesn't know your history or know you well. So it's better to get that personalized care from your own primary care provider. And most doctors' offices, I would say at least 99%, are available with the same telephone number you usually call. And usually you'll be talking to your doctor by phone, sometimes by video. But if necessary, we do see our patients in the office a few a day and have a lot of precautions to keep you safe. So we learned really what matters most, and it was really all the things that we're missing during the pandemic, things we can't do anymore. A lot of the entertainment and the things that we really looked forward to at the end of a week of school or work, like going to plays. So I'd like you to reflect on your own and what's on your to-do list. When this pandemic is over, what are you dying to do? What's the first thing you're going to do? And what are you going to do during that first week when restrictions are lifted and we can do that and keep one another safe? And really more important is who is on your to be with list? Because really, that's what I really want to do. I do want to get together with family and friends and to see them. And I know we can't do that now, but we're finding our ways of staying connected. But we really look for more than what we're actually going to be doing, but it's who we're going to be with. And that really tells us from what we've been missing in the pandemic, what's the most important thing in our lives. And it's really our relationships. So the greatest lesson is we need one another. We each need to feel understood, valued, and loved. We need to express our love. We need to be present, to listen to one another, to speak with kindness, and to act generously. And we need to embrace our loved ones. So this is my family. So one nice thing about the pandemic is that everyone is actually home for dinner. And briefly, my son, who was working in the States, was able to be with us for a few months. So that was kind of a blessing before he had to go back to work in the States. So it was really nice having everyone around for that short time. And again, I see my family as part of my mother's legacy. So the love she gave to me, I appreciate it, and I give forward to my kids and teach them how to love unconditionally and to pass that same love my mom gave me to their kids, their friends, their family, everyone they can touch in their lives as well. Relationships matter because harmony in your home is really essential to your well-being. And it doesn't come easily because conflicts at home, work, or school are a major source of stress. So you might think that everything I deal with in the office is physical, but it's not. I see a lot of depression, anxiety from people having really difficult situations at work or at school, be it bullying or anxiety or feelings of mistreatment in their workplaces or at school. And there was an author, Johann Hari, wrote this book, Lost Connections, a couple of years ago. And I was really struck by it because he gave his story about having depression throughout most of his adult life and going through many, many treatments and counseling and trying many antidepressant medications, which did help to a large extent. But he often found that something else was missing. And he felt that a lot of what he was feeling in depression and anxiety was stemming from a sense of disconnection, a disconnection from meaningful work, a disconnection from other people, disconnections from meaningful values, or disconnection caused by childhood trauma. It could be feeling disconnected from feeling respected, disconnected from nature, or having an insecure sense of the future. And of course, changes in our brain from brain injury or even from mood disorders can affect how we're thinking and how we're feeling. And his solution was more of a social prescription. So he found that his mood and his anxiety improved a lot when he reconnected with other people. That social prescription of connecting and doing things with others and having meaningful work and having values that are really meaningful to you. To be able to celebrate when there's good fortune for people around us, and overcoming that addiction to our smaller selves, our individual selves, acknowledging and overcoming the trauma of childhood and restoring a positive sense of the future, of moving forward and growing in the future. Loving friends and family really support your health. And you know, our big vision is that we all have our home as a safe haven for whatever we have to deal with in the outside world. We want to create a home for our children, for our partners and loved ones that feels safe, both physically as well as psychologically. Now, these resources are available online in our key points handout, but I just wanted to highlight that Burnaby Family Life has been in Burnaby for decades, and it's expanded because of the increasing needs. It offers counseling and supports to women who've experienced trauma from abuse or violence, and to children and youth who have witnessed domestic violence or any type of abuse. And they're available. They have several centers, but the main line is the number listed below. And you can find them also online at burnabyfamilylife.org. It's a wonderful nonprofit organization. For families with children that could help with some counseling, another great nonprofit in South Burnaby is Camray Child and Family Services. Again, it's community-based and it's really committed to strengthening individuals and families through a variety of services, including education, outreach, counseling, and advocacy. So you can reach them at camray.ca and the phone number listed here, but also on our handout. And Burnaby Neighborhood Houses. This is for people in Burnaby of all ages. There's one in North Burnaby and one in South, and they offer a variety of social programs because a lot of people don't have a lot of family that they can hang out with, and not just the elderly, but newcomers to our community. So I've referred a lot of patients of mine to Burnaby neighborhood house. And my dad finds it's a great way to connect to other seniors and others in his neighborhood as well. So the website is here, and the numbers for North and South Burnaby also in your handouts. And during the pandemic, our Burnaby Primary Care Network that was started with our Burnaby Division of Family Practice, it's really a partnership with both Fraser Health, the Burnaby Division of Family Practice, or Family Docs, and the great community organizations that provide a lot of support and services. They're here all the time, and they've really worked together to really step up extra supports for people struggling financially, socially, emotionally, or medically. So check on BurnabyCoronavirus.com. You can also find a link of resources on our Burnaby Division website as well. This is also a website that if you needed or you thought you might need testing for the coronavirus, it's a quick link. It could show you how you can register online or numbers that you can call for testing. And most of the time you can get tested the same day somewhere within Vancouver or Fraser House. So this is a good resource. And on this resource, you'll also see the connection to provincial health, which will tell us when we are able to register and get our vaccines in the community. So check BurnabyCoronavirus.com. Check it out even if you don't need any supports right now, so you know where it is, because chances are you know somebody in your neighborhood, a neighbor or a loved one that could use some help. So take a look at that and see what you can share with your loved ones and friends. So this section might seem like it's just talking about your romantic relationship with a spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, but it really applies to how our relationships can evolve from friendships at home, at school, how they can transform. So sometimes when we initially meet someone new, everything is kind of rosy and exciting and positive. And this isn't my wedding invitation, but we had the same thing on our wedding invitation 32 years ago. Today, I marry my best friend. But when couples and people don't get along, sometimes if they had a party, at a divorce party, the invitation would read, "Today I divorced my worst enemy." So how do we get from best friend to worst enemy when people don't really change that much? So we'll talk about the sources of conflict. Incompatibility, like different religious beliefs, cultural beliefs, different language, different personality characteristics like introversion versus extroversion, different values and beliefs. A lot of us do come from different backgrounds, and we come from different family backgrounds too. So these are not game changers having different backgrounds, but we need to see our commonality, and we need to be committed to work together to recognize and accept and appreciate our differences that bring more flavor and color and strength to our families and our relationships at work and at school, but also to be able to listen and to speak the same language, emotional language, as the person you're communicating with. Some game-changing incompatible values would be your core beliefs about right and wrong. So I recall one of my patients fell in love and got married to a really dangerous guy that was involved in a lot of organized crime. And of course, they eventually separated, but it was very acrimonious because they had big differences about family values and just values about what's right and wrong. So these are absolute game changers if someone has polar opposites of what is decent, what is appropriate, and how to treat other people. If there's abuse, physical, emotional, including verbal, or sexual abuse, I believe those are game changers. And that's why we need resources like Burnaby Family Life and what you can access through our primary care network. If you're in a dangerous situation and feel trapped, there are organizations that can help you in our community. And it's really important not to feel trapped in an endless cycle of abuse. So those are really important, not to stay in those situations. Cognitive distortions are what we all have. It's our way of automatically responding to a situation. It's kind of our shortcuts. So this makes our thinking more efficient. But it's one of the ways we start seeing each other differently. because we initially, when we meet someone new that we like, we see what we have in common, we see their positive aspects. But later on, when we see some negative things or some negative interactions, it can kind of distort, and we start seeing the negative side of other people's behavior or their lifestyles. So here's a few cognitive distortions that everyone has in their relationships. Mind reading is when we're making negative assumptions based on someone else's behavior when we don't necessarily know what their intentions are. Oh, by the way, this is from one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, My Favorite Martian. So the TV show is so old that the initial episodes were in black and white. And it kind of reminds me that when my son looked at baby pictures of me, my first pictures were in black and white too. So he was about 2 years old and he said, "Daddy, when you were a baby, were you black and white?" Because he thought that the world was quite different at that time because all the pictures were lacking color. So it's funny how we can jump to conclusions. So I remember in the first year of marriage, I had this favorite T-shirt, and my wife was always commenting that I should throw that T-shirt away. And then one morning I couldn't find my favorite T-shirt. So the first thought, of course, was negative. I think I know someone probably threw away my favorite T-shirt without asking me or consulting with me. And there she is trying to control my life. But then I caught myself and I realized she probably was right, that that old T-shirt probably didn't look very decent, and she was thinking about me, and obviously she bought me a new T-shirt. But it's really important to check things out when we're going to be quick to make negative assumptions about what other people, what our loved ones do. So watch out for mind reading, because we really can't do that, even if we know someone well. Excessive blaming, when something goes wrong, we kind of make assumptions that it's somebody's fault. We kind of look at whose fault it is. If there's only two of you at home, it's always somebody else. So this is an actual picture from my office. So I had to put up a sign. If you can't read it, it says the golden rule of the toilet is replace the empty roll so it doesn't look like this empty roll. So actually this isn't staged. I actually took that picture because someone had left an empty roll. And it says at the bottom, violators will lose their bathroom privileges. And then again, you have to come to some agreement. Is the toilet seat supposed to be up, or is the toilet seat supposed to be left down? So again, these are actual pictures from my office, including this one. This is really dangerous. So it's not really a compromise. It's just a very dangerous thing for anyone, regardless of how they prefer the seat. All or nothing thinking, like thinking in black and white, seeing all the bad and none of the good. So we often start off seeing all of the good when we fall in love, and then something happens and we start seeing all the negative when we're living together. Another source of conflict is neglect, loss of intimacy. We get so busy with the rest of our lives, maybe raising our kids or getting busy with work or our hobbies or with our friends. It kind of it takes over our life. And unless we schedule time together and quality time where we're paying attention, we will lose our emotional connection with one another. So it's really important to make that the commitment. Your most important relationships, schedule time for them. And sometimes we're both so busy at work, we fail to listen and attend to the people we work with every day too. So attend to the relationships first before you get down to business. And feelings can change. Romantic love matures and hopefully into enduring love, and passion changes into compassion. Or if we don't attend to it, that positive feeling just fades away. So a lot of people are addicted to how it feels like when you fall in love, that romantic love, that obsessive thrill and infatuation. And so some people go serial to get that dopamine high of being in a new relationship. It's almost like a psychosis where you really only see the good and none of the bad. But like many other psychological conditions, sometimes it's self-limiting. Fortunately, it doesn't require treatment or drugs because it pretty well always fades if you're infatuated. So that's why I think when two people fall in love, they should not be allowed to get married until they come to their senses and have a cooling off period. So hopefully my kids will adhere to that rule, or I won't give my permission. And I see relationships transform. So the quirky things that kind of endear us when we fall in love with somebody eventually start irritating us when the honeymoon is over. So I've had patients really angry at their partners because of things like the lights left on, or the door left on, or the heater left on. But those might be the very things that we're going to miss if that person's not around anymore. So one of my patients said he always got infuriated when his wife left the back light on when it doesn't need to be left on. It really got him upset. And I asked him to think about a time in the future when, if God forbid that she's not around anymore, and when that light is off, you'll say, I wish that light was on, because then my loved one would still be here with me. So it's good to reflect on that when we're quick to get irritated by these little minor things. And relationships with family and friends are kind of subject to a change of heart. So our adorable little kids that turn into little toddlers, and then they go into smarty pants teens, and they get engaged in other activities, and we feel not connected to them quite the same way. And when we stop doing enjoyable things together, we sometimes kind of get into each other's way. So we've each survived each of my kids going through the teens, and how they might say things they don't really mean. And it could be really sad and hurtful at that time, but we know that they're going through a phase. And my kids have turned out to be really gracious, wonderful kids, and didn't cause too much trouble. But I remember being a teenager and having a lot of very little patience for my parents, and thinking that I was so much smarter than them. And then 10 years later, in my mid-20s, I realized how smart they both were and how wise they were. I was just amazed how smart they got over just 10 years. And this is just kind of a simplification of our brains and how our emotions affect it. So we each have kind of this brainstem, the reptilian brain, that's really focused on survival, surviving our hunger and just staying warm, the fight or flight reflex. And then we have in the center the early mammalian brain, like a little mouse, that runs towards things that are attractive, that gets addicted to things, that is overwhelmed with either fear, anxiety, depression, or joy. And those emotions in both the brainstem and the midbrain can really hijack our thinking. And it's our early primate brain, the neocortex, where we can kind of reflect and rationally think. But as I mentioned, we kind of get into thinking traps as well. And that's why it's important that when we're really overwhelmed, really angry with one another, we have to watch our words and take a time out personally, so that we're not really confronting each other and saying things we don't mean, because that's how emotions, arguments escalate, and we end up hurting the people we love the most. So the qualities of a healthy relationship include mutual respect, that we have to respect one another's individuality. We have to respect them as human beings, respect their opinions, and respect their emotions and physical well-being. We need commitment to one another, and commitment to our relationship, that the relationship at work, at home, or with a family comes first before we put our individual needs on top. Realizing you're part of a greater whole in that relationship, and as an extension, your workplace, your home, your school, and your community. We need a sense of acceptance and managing our differences that make us unique and make our relationship and our environment and our teamwork unique. And we need that mutual positive regard, that mutual unconditional love. So we need that mutual respect for our individuality, for each other's feelings, and for each other's ideas. And we show that respect through our speech and our actions. We need to commit ourselves to one another, to our relationship in our family. And in the workplace, we have to commit ourselves to working together harmoniously and making it a safe, psychologically and physically safe place to work. So I'm one of the directors of our huge family practice clinic at Prime Care, and there's 4 of us, and we take it pretty seriously that we have to make sure it feels and is a safe place for all our staff and all our patients and for all the doctors that we're working with. It means listening to different opinions and to being respectful and not talking behind each other's back. So we express that commitment through the time we give to one another, through thought, through listening, being patient, and our effort and willingness to work together as a team. And we can learn to accept and manage our differences that make us unique. So 2 of my kids are quite introverted, and one of them is quite extroverted. So they have different passions and different ways of connecting. And people can have different spiritual beliefs, but they have to find that commonality of what their core beliefs are. And we'll talk a little bit about the languages of love as well. So Gary Chapman wrote a good series of books on the 5 languages of love, how each of us comes from a different background from our families, and we each have particular ways that we like to express our affection to other people, and different ways that we recognize love from others through their actions or words. So some people really need to hear those words of affirmation, really kind words, or knowing that in words that people really like them or approve of them or love them. Others, it's really important to spend that time together, to give quality time. Some people like receiving gifts that express thoughtfulness. Others, it's really acts of service, things you do for the family, things you do for the other person that shows kindness and affection. And many of us need that physical touch that many of us are missing during the pandemic. So take a moment and reflect with your significant relationships. How do you like to feel loved, and where do you feel loved? And how do you think your partner likes to feel loved? Which of these languages are most important to them? And if you're not sure, do talk to them and have a conversation about it. A lot of workaholic parents might spend all their time at work and doing that to support their family, and that's their way of showing love. But maybe the family members want to have that more time together. Their kids or their partner would like them to be at home and to do activities together. And some people need to express it in words and need to hear that to be reaffirmed. And others, it has to be that emotional closeness, that physical closeness too. So it's good for all of us to reflect how we feel loved, how we like to feel loved, and to kind of reflect on how we communicate it to others and how they wish to be communicated to them. This is a great book for kind of recognizing the strength of extroverts and introverts. So Susan Cain, who's an introvert, did a great TED Talk on the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking, because our world tends to favor the extroverts. So in case you're not familiar with it, extroverts are really energized by being around people. And introverts need that solitude to recharge. So being at a party for an introvert is very exhausting. But the extrovert kind of needs that social connection and interaction and speaking and talking to people and meeting people to feel energized. So if a couple is kind of opposite on that spectrum, and they have to find activities that will suit both of them, or to know that they should spend what they both feel is a fair amount of time doing both types of activities. Some quiet time together, but also some socializing time. Extroverts need to speak in order to really figure out what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And introverts often will be in a meeting or in a classroom or at a party and will think very carefully before they speak out, but they're just as involved in the conversation. So it's good for all of us, wherever we are in the spectrum, to understand how others get their energy and also that strength that they bring, that reflection or that energy that they bring to social situations. With acceptance and understanding, we can complement each other and be stronger that way. And then finally, unconditional love. That's mutual positive regard, even when we make mistakes, even when we're imperfect. Sometimes kids, even if their parents love them unconditionally, make the mistake and think because they get praise when they do something right, some of us start assuming that we have to be perfect in order to be loved. And we don't love ourselves unless we do everything right, which none of us does. So a lot of physicians are like that, of course, very perfectionistic and needing to get that praise or getting things right, and then really being down on themselves when they don't do things perfectly. So we need to have that unconditional love for ourselves as well as our loved ones and the people around us. Be a good time to do a little metta meditation. So this comes out of Buddhist practice and is part of a mindfulness practice that we actually use in medicine and psychology because it is quite evidence-based in how our brains work. So this is kind of a modification of a simple metta meditation to kind of help you feel that unconditional love. So I'd like you to just read these words. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. So you may want to close your eyes for a moment and just think about someone in your life who might be present now or someone from the past that just brings a smile to your face when you imagine their face. Just being around them makes you happy. And just say these words and think these thoughts towards them as you picture them in your eyes. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And when you say this over and over and just really feel it and express it and project that to the person that you're visualizing, you can really feel that natural warmth and love just the way they are. The next step of the meditation is just imagine someone, maybe one of your friends that you sometimes have disagreements with. So they don't always bring a smile to your face, but just imagine them in front of you and say those same words. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And just kind of see them in your mind's eye and wish them happiness and health, peace and safety. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And if there's someone in your life that you don't feel really positive about, that you may have had a lot of disagreements with and don't naturally smile when you think about them, I'd like you to imagine them in front of you. Imagine their face. And I want you to recognize that this person was once a baby, just like you, loved and embraced and cherished by his or her family, just like you. This person has had dreams and ambitions, just like you. And this person has had disappointments and times of sadness, just like you. This person has had illness and periods where they felt really dark and sad, just like you. And this person just wants to be happy, just like you. And then send these thoughts to them as well. May you be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And if you are struggling with negative feelings towards somebody, it's helpful on your own to spend a few more minutes, maybe even 5 minutes a day, kind of seeing them as a whole person. There are parts that are suffering, parts that are longing and hoping. There are times and memories of disappointments that they've had that we don't know about. And that deep down inside, they are just like you, human and imperfect, just like all of us. And that everyone deserves to be happy and healthy, peaceful and safe. And if we work on that, we will be able to engender that unconditional love, because that person hasn't had to do anything and you already feel more positive towards them. And that's a good set point to start with and to give people the benefit of the doubt. We need to nurture all of our relationships, and our most significant relationships with our family and closest friends. We need to foster that emotional intimacy and connection. So it's really important on creating healthy habits of connecting. Our last talk was on the keys to positive change, and we talked about how we kind of create habits, and a lot of our habits nowadays are kind of by default. We have positive habits like brushing our teeth before we go to bed, because there's always that timing, the trigger, and the immediate action we do as a routine. So you may want to create new healthy habits so that you can acknowledge and connect to one another to foster emotional intimacy and connection. So agree on a habit of checking in to one another at the end of the day. So my healthy habit with my wife is when I come home or when she gets into the door after working as a teacher, I always ask her, how was your day? And I give her a kiss and give her a hug and just let her talk and to talk about anything that happened during that day. And with each of my kids, I always check in with them when I see them when I come home from work or run into them after their day of work or school and ask them how their day went and just listen. So how are you feeling and how was your day? It's not saying, what did you do today, but how was your day and how are you doing? We need to show our affection and our appreciation. So we really need to express our positive feelings because we have a natural, what we call a thinking trap, a cognitive bias that's natural to all people. It's part of evolution. It's how we survive. We pick up on the negative things to stay out of danger and to protect ourselves or our tribe. So we pick up on negative things more than positive things. So remember those 5 languages of love. Express it in the language that your loved ones understand and appreciate. So be thankful and say it often. As we mentioned, the human brain is really like Velcro for the negative. It really, one negative thing really sticks in, and we're Teflon for the positive. So this is a colorful quote from Rick Hanson, a psychologist who's written the Buddha's brain, kind of connecting these meditative practices to modern neuroscience. And we really need to see 5 positives for every negative just to break even. So to be kind of neutral. So the more positives you can tack onto a negative, it's really important. So you need to see it in other people and you need to say it so we appreciate them and we feel grateful for our relationship and the other person. And we need to say it so that they hear it. So when you're thinking of criticizing or giving direction to one of your kids or someone at work, make sure you balance it out with at least 5 positives, which is a lot harder to do, but it actually helps shape our brain and actually really shapes our relationships as well. Otherwise, they're just thinking you're going to come up and say something negative or some criticism. And we really have to balance it with 5 positives. We need to schedule regular dates, time with our family and our friends. And it's important if you're missing out on some of your best friendships to just give them a call or a text or a chat or set up a video call if you can, so you can see them and connect and see how they're doing. So sometimes we forget about that when we get busy with family or busy with work. So commit your time to who matters most and don't wait till there is time. You have to make time. Because the tragic thing is that the busyness of life will consume all the time we'll allow it to give. Unless we make priority for the real priorities in our life, life will just slip by. And we need to communicate in a healthy way. So take a breath and let any anger cool before you react. You need to acknowledge the other person's feelings and their point of view. And it is important to express how you feel without blaming. So you could say, when this happened or when you said that, this is how I felt, in a non-blaming way, instead of saying, you made me feel terrible. So coming from how you're feeling or what you've observed, what you've sensed, to start with that and just as a statement without blaming. I just did a talk with physicians yesterday. So it was a course on learning how to listen to colleagues, because physicians and other healthcare providers have been really stressed over this past year, just the danger to one another and our families. And protecting our patients as well. So in the course, we were asked, thinking about what listening style we're using. You might be not listening at all. You might be listening in a conversation, but in order so you can respond, thinking about what we're going to think and say next. Or we might simply be listening to understand, which is probably the most important, that we need to listen and be open to understanding without having another agenda, or thinking about what we're going to say next, or doing something else at the same time. So some listening traps we learned yesterday are those distractions. It could be playing a game when you're sitting with your family, watching a show together. Or if you're having coffee with a friend and you're checking your phone and checking for text messages, these interruptions. Or if you're talking together, but you're always trying to solve a problem when you're not being asked to solve the problem, you're just being asked to listen. Or we might kind of discount how the other person is feeling and telling them, oh, they shouldn't feel sad about that. They shouldn't be anxious or worried about it. But it's important to acknowledge how the other person is feeling. It has great healing power and connecting power. Or we might be listening and just trying to guess what they're going to say next, or maybe cutting them off and telling the rest of their story. Or just telling our own story when someone else is trying to explain their point of view or their experience or what happened during the day. Or just jumping to giving advice right away before you've really listened to the other person's experience and feelings. Or providing feedback or trying to solve their problems without really asking their permission and to make sure that's what they really want. So right speech is to listen first, to listen to understand and to experience it from the other person's point of view. And it's very powerful when you just let someone talk and you acknowledge and show that you understand by your attention, not multitasking with something else, nodding, showing agreement, and maybe even paraphrasing and making sure that you understood things properly. But it's important to show you're listening and to really be listening. And before you say a word, just think first, is what I'm saying true? Is it helpful to the other person in our relationship? And is it a kind thing to say? So the three measures, it has to be all three of them before we should say anything. I believe that each of us has a unique positive potential in life, and it's really our duty to realize our potential and to help others achieve theirs. In fact, that's my own kind of personal mission statement as a human being, as a parent, as a friend, as a physician, that I achieve my positive potential by helping my patients, my family, all that I work with and play with to achieve their potential. And your purpose or your calling, your potential is this intersection of your passion, what you love to do, your talents, what you do best, and what the world needs. And that's something I'm always looking out for, because this changes over time in the phase of life and the phase of your relationship. So we've learned a lot of things running practices and running the division of family practice. And so a root cause analysis is how we kind of evaluate why problems exist. We sometimes ask what the cause, why did this patient get sick? Was it because they got the wrong medication? Did they get the wrong medication because the prescription wasn't written properly, or was it the wrong diagnosis? Was there some clerical error? Was there a misunderstanding? So we kind of go down the list to find out what the root cause is. That's what we call a root cause analysis, when there's a medical error or a problem to be solved. So I really like that model. So I went down and looked at all the problems in the world, and I found that there is one root cause for all the problems in the world. For poverty, for crime, for the pandemic, for war, for hunger and homelessness, and the opioid crisis. For loneliness, despair, for anxiety and depression. And the root cause, from my opinion, is that it's from a false sense of self. So you are not a lonely, separate, single self. Because from that perspective, which a lot of people really think that they are individuals, independent individuals. But if you take that to the extreme, your life story would be kind of a helpless and hopeless struggle, running away from pain, running towards pleasure, always competing, always trying to get ahead, always trying to earn more, always trying to be in a perfect relationship, always in competition. And in the end, we eventually die and lose all those things that we've tried to accumulate over time. So with this kind of model, this sense of a separate self, it just leads to an empty life. This mistaken sense of identity kind of creates the other, seeing other people as being separate. Other people become strangers or become the enemy or become the competitor. So that's how we can get, think people from another country, from another ethnicity or another religious belief, or even the people in our own workplace or at school or at home or our neighborhood are radically different, separate others than ourselves. And that creates a lot of strife. And that's why we haven't worked together as a society as much as we could to help all who are in need. But a way to a solution is to recognize that the feelings and experience of others are just like yours, just as we did in that unconditional love meditation. And with more empathy and less judgment, we can recognize our connection and interdependency. So we have been the beneficiaries of all these positive things that people have done, created our cities, our schools, our institutions, our government, volunteers that have actually made our community safer. And, I'm grateful to all the healthcare providers that looked after me, but also all the research and study and teaching that I've received through many, many sources. We could not exist separately. None of us is self-made. We have to recognize our shared challenges because the greatest problems of the world can only be solved with collective creativity. None of us can do it by ourselves. It's not just one fearless leader that can lead us through this. We need to build bridges and strengthen our connections, both our personal connections and our social connections. And it really requires the support of not only institutions, but it really begins with each of us. So who are you really if you're not a separate self? You are a part of a greater whole. You're a member of a family. You're supported by a network of friends and family, neighbors and peers. You're also a member of our community, a citizen of this nation and part of humankind, but also connected to all living things. You're an inseparable part of all nature and this planet. And most importantly, you belong here. So I hope you'll join us in our collective endeavor to achieve our positive potential. And we're here to help you achieve yours. I have my own website if you want to read some of my articles about achieving your positive potential and staying healthy, emotional as well as physical and social well-being. And of course, we have all those resources on the Burnaby Division website, divisionspc.ca. And together we're going to create a healthier, connected community where everyone belongs. So I'm going to turn off my screen share. I'm just going to ask Leona if anyone has any questions that they put forward through their chat.
No, we haven't seen any questions, Dr. Wong. I think you cover it. Yeah, no, we haven't. I did share the materials, the websites that you spoke of through the chat, but the key points document is already loaded on our website, and hopefully tomorrow or Monday we'll have a copy of the presentation up there as well. And as usual, please sign up for our next talk, which I think is March 25th, but we'll double check that. But that, again, the information to register is on the website.
Yeah, and when we talked about the 4 foundations of self-care, we presented talks, and all the slides from previous talks are on our Burnaby Division website. So you just divisionsbc.ca/Burnaby, and then click on Empowering Patients or Patient Information. And we even have a whole bunch of videos that we did together. And one of them is all the questions that we usually ask with complete physicals, but of course, no one's had a complete physical in the past year. So it's a good thing to kind of look through to see what screening tests you might be due for at different ages, depending on your gender, and also the symptoms that should prompt you to contact your family doctor.
Dr. Wong, I did get a chat from Craig. Thank you for sharing. The question is, now they're popping in. Sorry. What would be the key to dealing with the physical death of a friend and not being able to speak with them again? Any thoughts?
That's one of the hardest things, because I know personally when my mom died, she died really suddenly and didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And sometimes we're blessed. I was kind of blessed in my relationship with my mom that she always said how much she loved me and showed it in ways that I understood. And I was able to say the same things and to say those things that matter most. The 4 things that matter most came from Ira Brock. She was a palliative care physician. The things we need to say to one another for closure and completion in our relationship are to be able to say, thank you. I forgive you, anything that you had between you that needed some forgiving. And please forgive me for the things that we did or said wrong or didn't do. And to say, I love you, and finally say goodbye. So sometimes we might have to do that. If we didn't get a chance to do that in our lives together, we might do that in a letter or maybe in a meditation to send those good thoughts, positive thoughts towards them. So we need that for closure, and to do things in your life as a tribute to that dear friend or loved one as well. So a lot of what I do is for the legacy of my mom, to give to my community and to my family and those that I can be in touch with. So kind of create that living memorial and carry on that legacy of love from your loved ones. Thanks for the question, Craig.
I think that's it. We've got some lovely thoughts from folks, some thank yous, so we appreciate that. With that, if there's no more questions, I think we've done it.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for all of your time this evening. And please share anything you learned that was useful to the people that you love and you care about as well. And thanks again to Leona.
Oh, my pleasure. Always my pleasure. When I turn off the session, there will be a pop-up of a survey, just 7 questions. If you wouldn't mind, if you have the time, fill them in. The information is really valuable. And one of the questions is an opportunity for you to add your email to our list, because I send out reminders on these talks, plus other information that comes from the division that would be of interest or value to yourself as residents. So that will pop up pretty quick.
Thank you, Leona, and thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.